Welcome to the summer edition of the Sprint to Success with Design Thinking podcast.
How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin, and how do you develop the mindset and skill set to be successful? Welcome, everyone, to the Sprint to Success with Design Thinking podcast. I'm your host, Saba Kidwai. Join me each week as I share the stories and strategies from the world's leading researchers and practitioners about why they believe the answer lies in practicing design thinking.
The fall of 2013, and it was actually my mom. I'm a mama's boy. My mom had kind of called me out and she said, Brian, you seemed like you stress out a lot about social media in this new role that you have as this evangelist. She's like, I just want to make sure that you're keeping true to who you are and what you do that's great. And she's like, you've always been, since you were little, unapologetically yourself. And as funny as it sounds, she's like, I don't even see a picture of you with a hat on in your social media posts. And I was like, oh, Mom, of course, I'm like, Mom, you don't know anything about social media. Of course I'm being myself. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I hung up and I remember just sitting there and being like, she's right. And I walked into my bathroom and with a Sharpie, I actually wrote on the mirror in my bathroom, be yourself in big letters. And I said, you know what? This is the day. And I will tell you, the thing that I didn't like about social media was I spent all day trying to craft the perfect post of what I thought people wanted to hear about me. And on that day, November 2nd, 2013 forward, I stopped trying to put out there what I thought people wanted to hear. And I just started telling my story, who I was and what I learned. I didn't want to convey that I was an expert or a thought leader. I shared, hey, this was my experience. This is what I learned. And these were my results. Hopefully it helps. And my world changed, right? That spring, I was awarded the top 25 social business leader of the future by The Economist, which at the time, my boss came in and threw it down on my desk. He's like, apparently people think what you're doing is pretty cool. Now I will say the CEO is like one of the smartest people I've ever met with. And I don't think he meant like derogatory, but he was never one. Like the reason I spoke at a lot of events is he would just get frustrated and be like, screw it, Brian, you speak, I'm flying on my private jet home. Like that was his mantra. And I got that award. And a year later, I'd flown around to the TED Talks. They flew me around with all these different social business leaders, all of them much older than I was, but I got this great exposure. And then I was really trying to, I'd started a Google Plus Hangout show, and I started interviewing some of the people that were part of this thing. And then this thing called live streaming came out. And it was the app for your phone. The first one was called Meerkat. It came out, my first one was February 27th, 2014. And I was in Barcelona, Spain, working with Dell. I was actually working with Dell on a video project. And I had spent 4 days with Dell at Mobile World Congress, one of the largest mobile events in the world. And we were creating video content for 4 days. And this app came out where you could live stream to Twitter with one, press the button. And funny enough, there's someone from Twitter that told me, he's like, Ashton Kutcher and Gary Vaynerchuk are on this app, Brian, you should check it out. And I remember getting off the phone with him. I'm like, he thinks because those two guys are on it, I should. Like, when did I get into like that cool of an atmosphere? And trust me, I'm not on that atmosphere, but it was it was one of those things. And so I pressed the button the very first time, right outside the Dell booth on the conference floor, and it went live. And I didn't put a title in it because I didn't know what I was doing. And I had one viewer. His name is Gary from Indiana. He is now famous, although he does not know this. He was my one viewer. It popped up, Gary from Indiana, and I was like, hey, Gary, how are you? I'm in Barcelona, Spain at Mobile World Congress. And he was like, is that the Microsoft booth over there? Can you show me their new phone? And I remember being like, it is the Microsoft booth. And in my head, I was like, I just spent 4 days here capturing video content, and I didn't go over to that Microsoft booth to capture content. And it was my epiphany that live video was this ability to allow the audience to participate in what I was doing. Now, the story doesn't have a happy ending. I walked 4 feet. The Wi-Fi dropped out. Gary from Indiana deactivated his account a couple months later. And when I started to tell the story, I went back and tried to find who Gary was because it was such like a moment for me. And so then I started really going all in on live video, doing multiple live videos a week. And then I started working with brands and influencers. And I got to work with I launched Dell, IBM, Samsung, SAP, HP, the UFC, Applebee's. I launched all of they built the strategy, and I was the guinea pig of their very first live streaming projects. And it was a wild, and all these people are like, man, you're an overnight success, Brian. And, kudos to them because they were probably right, because I was hiding all this like work that I had done in my previous life. And for them, I was kind of emerging on this marketing scene because of live video. And I started work. And for me, the thing was, I had learned because my mom had told me to put myself out there and be my unapologetic self. And live video was not about being perfect. It was about putting yourself out there and being okay with admitting when things went wrong. I mean, a majority of the time, like people are like, we can't hear you, or like your signal's bad, or whatever that may be. And it was my perfect medium because I wasn't trying to be perfect. It was just telling my story, who I was. And I mean, it changed my life. I discovered my friends, my people, actually my current partner. I discovered because the Weather Channel was the brand that I was loving what they were doing on live video. She happened to be the strategist behind that, who I went and met her at a conference because of that. And what the whole thing came into was people would be like, wow, Brian, like you are a live streaming expert. You're a storyteller. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. And I'm not a live streaming expert. I found a medium that suited how I like to tell my story. And I would start to tell people that, and they would get all excited. And I would say, I have two rules. Perfection's a fairy tale, and control is an illusion. You can only control yourself. You cannot control what other people say, how people handle what you're doing. And people would be so inspired and so excited. And then they would come to see me speak the year later. And they would say, Brian, I was excited. I was motivated. But then I went back and I got busy with email. And then when I went to go live the first time, I didn't have my hair cut. So then I waited to get my hair cut. And then when I got my hair cut, I changed jobs. So I didn't want to do. And they would come back to me and be like, I'm excited. Look at all these notes I took last year. I'm going to do it. And funny enough, it was an event. The 5 minutes before going on stage, I typed up a new slide and just said, press the damn button. And I got up there, and at the end, I just said, please, please. The best time to put yourself out there is right now. Just please press the damn button. And funny enough, it was the thing that resonated the most. And the way I look at it now is it has nothing to do really with video. It has a lot more to do with the first part of that story that I was telling, was that, and this is the mindset that I want to put people in. And if you're a student, you're going to embrace this. But for you to convey it to older generations, you're going to need this knowledge. My dad raised me with, son, your handshake is important. Your word is bond. And let your work do the talking for you. That was my dad. My dad, one of the most successful people in the candy business space, entrepreneur. He grew up a very large peanut brittle company that sold to a large worldwide corporation. And the thing about it is, my dad was right for a long time. But in 2020, if you were waiting to let your work to do the storytelling for you, you are going to be drowned out by the megaphone, the fakers till they make it, the people selling unicorns and rainbows, and all those that are putting it out there. And so the way that I look at this is, the old school way was, hey, let my work do the talking for you. The new school way is, let people in and have access to you and put your story out there so that we can celebrate those that are doing good things. I'm a firm believer, even in these current times, that there are more good people doing good things than we know of. And it's because they're doing it in the shadows and the silence, and they're kind of waiting for that exposure. And unfortunately, social media, it's made the world smaller, but it's also given a megaphone to people that shouldn't have the megaphone. And so that's where press the damn button is like, it's my call to arms of like, if you're a good person doing great things, it's time to tell your story. If you're not a good person doing good things, it's time to reevaluate things and maybe try to do something different. But that's where press the damn button is. It's everything to me. It's ingrained in me from November 2nd, 2013 till today. And I've kind of matured and figured out lots of different ways in that. But it's also something that I think of right now. There is no better time. We are living in a very forgiving, virtual digital space where everyone's trying to figure out what this whole new world looks like. And right now is the time that you have to put yourself out there. It's more than a personal brand. It's your story. It's your reputation. It's your credit score. It's your first impression. It's your, legacy. It's all of those combined, which can feel overwhelming, but I think it's a lot less overwhelming once you start, integrating it into your world.
It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you still have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Sprint to Success with Design Thinking community.